Okay, and welcome to the Extra Time Talk podcast with me, Andrew Aziz, and if you want to introduce yourself, Matt.
Hi, and it's Matt Jarvis.
Hi, Jarvis. So welcome to the Extra Time Talk podcast. We're going to talk about a few of the main topics in football that's been going on this week. Firstly, we're going to look back at the Champions League, which was a weird week for English sides. And then we're going to talk about the England squad, which was announced today. And then we'll have a look at the Villa job and what's the aftermath of Steve Bruce's sacking. So let's get it started. We'll start with the Champions League yesterday. So obviously, Matt, you're a Spurs fan.
Yeah.
What did you think of the game yesterday, and how did you feel it went?
I think I thought first half Spurs looked pretty naive. I think in some ways you could kind of see that the plan was there to try and crowd Messi. And I'll come back to Messi in a little while. But I thought second half Spurs actually, they played a lot better. And they got themselves back into the game with Kane and Lamella. But I think what was clear yesterday from a Tottenham point of view was just the lack of signing in the summer. He's going to, I think, over the course of the season, he's going to come back and haunt Spurs in some ways, because the players that came in yesterday, and with all due respect, I mean, Winks played for 90 minutes and did well. Lamella's actually had a decent season so far, but when you're chasing a game against Barcelona and you bring Moussa Sissoko and Llorente on, and that's all you've got, it's a big concern for me, that.
Firstly, first goal. What did you think about Lloris on that first goal? I mean, he's coming out trying to be a sweeper keeper. It's not his first error of the season either.
No, I mean, my initial thought was, what are you doing? I mean, he's been good over the year, the sweeper keeper, and he's had that kind of attached to him. But I mean, he didn't need to come out to there anyway. I mean, he created more danger than was already existing. I think Lloris is still a very good goalkeeper, and obviously, he's a World Cup winner. But we saw in the World Cup final, the kind of mistakes that he's capable of. And I think my concern with Lloris now is that his errors are starting to become a little bit too frequent.
Do you think? Because I mean, I watched the games with Gazaniga. He played quite well. I thought he did
Yes.
very well. Do you think it was? I think with the Lloris thing is do you feel he's been aptly punished for his drink driving?
It's a difficult one. I think you tend to find with famous people that there does seem to be some leniency. With from the club's point of view, I suppose that's down to them in terms of how they do it, and I suppose I wouldn't like to really kind of commit to saying about the legal process, but I think probably overall my gut feeling is yes, he has got off lightly. Yeah. Whether that's affected him coming back and playing, whether that's on his mind, I don't know, but I kind of feel even without that he is becoming a bit more erroneous.
Yeah.
I mean, he's never been great with his. I mean, he's been okay as a sweeper keeper, but he's never been great when kicking the ball. It's never been one of his strongest qualities. So, and yeah, as you say, Gazaniga played a couple of games now. In the League Cup, wasn't great, but he was okay. But I think in the last game against Huddersfield, there were signs of confidence, and certainly I would certainly say with Vorm now injured and some of Vorm's performances, which haven't been good.
Then Vorm's gone to number 3 surely now after this.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, the Liverpool game was the one, wasn't it? For 2 mistakes.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, the Liverpool game. And I think I don't think Lloris is going to be replaced as number 1 just yet. I don't think that's going to happen at all.
What did you think about a lot of Spurs fans all season have said Eric Dyer's not good enough. Eric Dyer's not good enough. Where's Wanyama? I felt Wanyama really struggled yesterday. I didn't think he got really. I think Arthur kind of obviously Messi would run the show, but Arthur controlled the tempo of the game. Did you feel Wanyama was a bit off, or?
Yeah, I don't think he'd ever fully recovered from his injury. He's had injury over the last 2 seasons. And I mean, the first season he came in to Spurs under Poch, and sort of the second, he was a bit of a man mountain. He was vibrant. He was getting up and down the pitch. He just hasn't got that. He's lost that little bit of almost strength. I think he'd have a bit more pace than people gave him credit for. I mean, obviously last season he scored an incredible goal against Liverpool at Anfield, but yeah, I didn't feel he played well last night, and I think that I think Eric Dyer will be back in the starting lineup at the weekend for the game against Cardiff City at Wembley.
Yeah, I think whenever you play Barcelona, and to be fair, Spurs last year when they played Real Madrid, they had a high tempo, they pressed them. But I didn't feel they did that yesterday. I always felt like Barcelona, even when Spurs scored, I felt like Barcelona always had an extra gear to go to.
Yeah, absolutely, and I've felt that since the beginning of the season with Tottenham. Whether it's to do with, hangovers from the World Cup and tiredness, but, there's a lot of other teams in the Premier League that have got played at the World Cup, and I don't...
I mean, Hazard started the season well, hasn't he? He's
so I think it's difficult to use that excuse. I think, Kane against Huddersfield certainly was starting to look, more like the player that we expect to see, and I think it's, I think people have been very quick to write him off.
Yeah, one of the players who a lot of people you've been quite complimentary about, but he didn't have a good game yesterday, especially with his passing from defence, was Davinson Sanchez. What did you make of his performance?
Yeah, again, I think some of these sort of big occasions that I've noticed he does. I don't know whether he loses concentration or whether, I don't know, there's a bit of nerve setting in. I mean, he's a young lad. But yeah, I felt he looked like, even when he wasn't being hurried, he looks like he was hurried. He was a little bit lax. I think his concentration sometimes lets him down. I do think he's a very good player, and I think, I think ultimately he'll become a really, really good player for Tottenham. And Pochettino obviously trusts him to play with. But
he's a 40 million player, isn't he? So yeah, you should trust him, really.
It wasn't his best performance last night. He looked strangely a bit overawed. I'm not sure why that would be, but yeah, it wasn't his best game.
Do you think that was possibly now coming on to Messi, because I think he does deserve some praise? Do you think that's probably the best player you've ever seen play against Spurs?
Good question. Yes, very possibly. It's kind of hard to wrap my brains over sort of 35 years of supporting Spurs, but
yeah.
I think the thing with Messi last night was that he makes the game look so easy. He creates so much space for those around him, and you could see that Spurs were putting sort of players around him, but he just eases past people. He makes the game look so easy. I don't think enough credit's given to actually his teammates some of the time that do obviously, have a really good understanding of his reading of the game. But
yeah,
we can say what we want about whether Tottenham should have done better, but when Messi's playing like that, the best defenders, the best teams in the world can't defend against that kind of football.
No. I think a lot of people accept that if he's playing well, then Barcelona play well, and Barcelona. I mean, I think if you look at last season when they went out to Roma, Messi was hardly in that match in the second leg. I don't know what was wrong with him on that day, and it shows Barcelona, for them to be top, they need Messi to be playing well.
Yeah, and they've not, Barcelona haven't had the best start to their season. They've been indifferent. But yeah, when he plays, and I mean a pitch like Wembley, a big pitch like that, is it's just perfect for him. I mean, just
what
a
did
super player.
Yeah, Pochettino calling the Spurs players heroes? Do you think that was a bit of an overreaction? I thought it was a bit strange when I heard that. I was like, oh, did they win or score?
Just a little bit. I've actually commented on this on some social media earlier today, and I kind of have a big issue with the word heroes being used anyway when it comes to footballers, because I don't think being paid all that money and playing football is a heroic. I think it's a bit of a bad use of the term, but I think Spurs did put a lot of effort in. I think they look better than they have done at other times this season. In the second half, they did play better. But for a manager to come out and kind of call it a heroic performance was very odd. Some of his comments this season have been a little bit odd. He didn't really praise the team after they beat Man United 3-0, and then they lose 4-2 to Barcelona and they're heroes. It's a little bit bad.
Yeah, I think I am finding Pochettino in the high-profile matches. Don't know. It seems to me he's almost interviewing for another job. The way he dresses differently, the way he talks differently. It's a bit different. It's strange. Oh, okay, well that's enough Spurs chat for now. We'll talk about Liverpool. Yesterday they lost. Alisson was their best player, so it shows that they didn't have the greatest game. Lots and lots of people saying this is the start. Liverpool aren't going to be able to compete with Man City. And what were your thoughts on what do you think of Liverpool this year?
They've had a fantastic start to the season, and that's there for everybody to see. I mean, Liverpool were the only team really that sort of last season you could say really pushed Manchester City in any way. Certainly on the pitch in the games they played, there was the one game when I know they went down to 10 men. Napoli kind of ruined it, but the Champions League and League, they weren't great last night. I think there's still question marks over the defence at times. Sometimes they look very good. Sometimes they still look a little bit lax. And as you said, Alisson, man of the match, kind of told its own story. When you keep his match, then but I think Jurgen Klopp said it. He was quite open about it. Liverpool weren't good enough last night. Whether they can, we'll find out this weekend on Sunday. Whether Liverpool can push Manchester City will be interesting. Manchester City have looked good again. But
hello?
Yeah.
Sorry, so you just kind of cut off there for a second.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Man City have looked good, but I think there have been the odd signing games that that teams can take it to Man City this season, and I certainly think that Liverpool have got the players to do that. And Salah's not, he's not started the season, great. Hasn't Kane, but I don't think that'll be enough. I'll be honest. I very much see Man City as favourites for the league, and I would say at the moment that that Liverpool are the team that at the moment I would see at the early stages of the season probably pushing for that second place.
What do you think? A lot of people have talked about the fact that I think all the Italian teams this week have won. Napoli won, Inter won. Inter obviously beat Spurs in the first game.
Yeah.
Juve have started the season on fire, and Roma won as well, didn't they? Yep. Are we seeing a renaissance of Serie A now? Especially, Roma got to the semi-finals last year. It's been a bit of a weak time for Italian football, but do you think it's back up there now with La Liga and the Premier League?
It's possibly a bit too early to say that. Certainly the results in the Champions League are indicating that I think Italian football has taken quite a long time to recover from obviously the betting scandals and the match fixing. All those years ago. I think it's taken them quite a while. Italian football by its nature has always been quite slow, methodical. When I do watch it sort of now, I still find it it's not sort of easy on the eye all the time, but we are starting to see more attacking, maybe flair from Italy that we would have expected sort of back in the early 90s and certainly the mid to late 80s. But yeah, I mean, the results at the moment in the Champions League are saying that they're certainly, all going to be teams to be reckoned with. But, there's a long way to go in the Champions League yet. And, time will ultimately tell. But I think it's probably too early to say that they're up there with La Liga and the Premier League at this moment in time. But certainly, I think it's right to say that Italian football does look like it's getting back onto its feet. It's been a bad time for the national team. So, yeah, it's one to watch with interest, absolutely.
Yeah, I think generally, I think we would like to see. I think football as a whole would benefit if we saw the renaissance of, AC. I think Juventus have been up there. They've got to 2 Champions League finals in the last few years.
Yeah.
But obviously, AC Milan have had their own financial problems recently. But I watched them last week actually, and I thought they were really, really good. So maybe they're coming back. I think Inter were quite poor against Spurs and were lucky to get a win.
Yeah. I would obviously agree with that. But
yeah.
no, I didn't think Inter Milan were great. I thought that was another game where Spurs again they weren't great in the first half. They were much better in the second half, and really they were a bit of an old Spurs there. They self-destruct button a little bit in that game, and I think Inter Milan got away with one.
Just coming back to Spurs, a lot of people talked about Pochettino in-game management. He had the FA Cup semi-final where Spurs went 1-0 up, creating chances, but they didn't kind of close the game down and allowed Man U back into that game. Yeah. Same was said in some of the other big games this year against Liverpool. Do you think that will always be something which will be thrown at Pochettino until he wins a trophy?
Yes, probably. Because until no matter what he said. I've gone on record and clearly said this before that Pochettino, considering resources, has done a fantastic job with years. But we can't, as a Spurs fan and from a media point of view, we can't keep saying every season, "Oh, look what he's done with the resources," and not win anything. I think sometimes he does leave substitutions very late. It's a bit of a thing you'll see on social media amongst a lot of the Spurs forum. But one of the things that comes up is he kind of tends to wait till 70, 75 minutes when it's sometimes difficult to change games. But he has also got I think he's certainly this season got a problem that in terms of the personnel, because we've not strengthened the squad, that we've got the same play. You can feel that Spurs have stood a little bit still in the summer. So, yeah, I think that probably is going to get left at Pochettino about his in-game management, particularly when, we don't, if we're losing games and we don't change it and we don't win, then that's going to get levelled so, Spurs, people talk about Spurs need to win things, but, they've not won anything for, however many years, the same amount of years, I think, as Liverpool. We've finished above them consistently in recent seasons. So it's I don't know, it's a tough one, because we hear it about lots of teams got to win something, but what people forget, I did a recent interview with Mickey Hazard, and there's only basically 3 trophies. You've got the Champions League, the Premier League, and the League Cup.
The FA Cup.
The FA Cup, sorry. So 4. But if you think about it, you've got all those teams. Ultimately, you can say people win things, but there's only 4 trophies. Yeah. One of which potentially is not going to be won by an English club. And then you've only got, out of all those teams.
Then someone's always going to throw that argument, though, that Leicester have won the Premier League, Swansea have won the League Cup, Wigan have won the FA Cup, isn't it? There's always those anomalies. So
going to be there, but I'm kind of from the old school that I would, I want to see trophies, I want to see silverware. That for me is glory and his success, and always will be. But unfortunately, with the dawn of the Champions League and the way money is now, unfortunately for the majority of chairmen, finishing in the top four, the main objective. And I find that quite sad. I mean, we have a competition called the Champions League, which has people who finish third and fourth in, and yes, that's great for Spurs, but how can you call it the Champions League when people are playing in it who haven't won anything?
But would you really want to see, especially now with how the league's developed, would you want to be seeing the champions of Romania playing against the champions of England in the group stages? Not really.
No, I suppose not, and I can understand. Yeah. I can understand why it's happened, but the point I'm sort of making is that because of the way football's gone, a lot of chairmen see finishing in the top four as being success. As I said, I'm very much at the old school. I see it as progress, and it's great that Spurs are finishing in the top four and getting into the Champions League. That's great, but ultimately, fans do, I believe, want to see silverware. They want to see trophies, and finishing third every year for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, ultimately may be great, may bring money in, but to call that success, it's difficult. I can see that it's considered success nowadays, but it's a very different kind of success to where football was, maybe 20, 30 years ago.
Okay, let's move on. We'll talk about England now. Gareth Southgate's announced his squad today. A few names who'd been rumoured to be for the UEFA Nations League games against Croatia and Spain. Firstly, the Championship player has been chosen in Mason Mount. Obviously, he's on loan from Chelsea. People seem positive about it. Do you have any thoughts? Obviously, you're from Derbyshire, aren't you? So
well, I'm not originally from Derbyshire, but I've lived in Derbyshire for the last sort of 20 years. So I've had a chance to watch him a few times at Derby. What I would say is, from what I've seen of him, the potential is there for him to be a great player. You can see he's like a very young Frank Lampard, actually, in the way he plays. Very similar kind of style way of getting around the pitch. He's a little bit slight at the moment, so he sometimes does get knocked off the ball, but he can certainly score goals. He's not played many games. I'll be honest, I was surprised to see him selected for England, certainly for the senior team, so early in his career. But then Southgate, over the last 18 months, as he said today, is kind of what they've done, and he's signed his new, he's extended his contract with England, the manager, which I think is positive, and he's gonna take a risk, if you like. He's gonna give opportunities to.
But do you think he is kind of the issue for me is in that it's the fact that he's picking players who are young and who deserve a chance and so forth, which is good, but is that kind of because the players he's kind of ruling out, for instance, he's ruled out Troy Deeney, saying he's a bit too old now. Troy Deeney's only 30. Players like John Joe Shelvey and Will Hughes, both had really good spells in the Premier League. Mid-20s. Neither of them have been given a call up, and obviously both of them have played over 100 Premier League. Sorry, John Shelvey's played over 100 Premier Leagues. Will Hughes has played 2-3 seasons now. Do you think it's unfair for them because they'll be like, well, I've been playing well in the Premier League, but I'm getting ignored, whilst this kid's played 5 games in the Championship and he's in the squad?
Yeah, I would imagine they probably, they find out they knew them probably chucking glasses at the wall. I can understand they'd be very frustrated, maybe angry. I'll address them each. I think Will Hughes, the first couple of seasons at Watford, obviously he left from Derby. He struggled really to get a lot of game time. He was a substitute, and he wasn't really,
broke his leg, didn't he, as well?
I
think he had a serious injury as well, didn't he?
And I think since he's come back, he's played well. I suppose in old-fashioned parlance, he's kind of what I would probably call a bit of a journeyman footballer. He's got some skill about him, but he's a good player to have on the pitch. I would say, from what I've seen of him, I'm not sure that he's the kind. I don't think he's an England international. Just my personal opinion from what I've seen. That's not to say I don't think he's a good player. John Joe Selvey, I think it was absolutely ridiculous that he didn't go to the World Cup. I have been laughed at for this, and I don't mind that at all. But my opinion is that actually, I think when we got to the semi-final of the World Cup, we really were crying out for a John Joe Selvey, that player who, when you've got Croatia, who were very good on the ball, midfielders getting very tired, we didn't really have that player who could pick out, that pinpoint pass. And I think John Joe Selvey is one of the most underrated players in the Premier League. I think what's probably going against him at the moment, unfortunately, he's playing, and not to upset yourself, of course, but he is ultimately playing in a very a Newcastle.
We're rubbish. You can say that.
Yeah, well, we'll go there. We'll just go straight out with it. But
I think that if Southgate was going to choose him at the end of last season, those 10, 12 games at the end of the year, he was man of the match against United. He was man of the match against Arsenal. He's man of the match against Chelsea. He was terrific. If Southgate was going to choose him, he was going to choose him then because he was in the best form of his career. Now this season, he's been out for a few games. He played the last game. He's not in the same form as he was at the end of last year. So he probably doesn't deserve an England call up now, but he definitely deserved one in the summer, especially when we had very, very similar midfielders, Delph, Dyer, who aren't going to provide anything extra from Jordan Henderson. So
no, and who I have to say, he did do well at the World Cup. I'm not the biggest fan of Jordan Henderson. I don't think he's a very progressive footballer. I think he's quite negative, and I think in a couple of the recent Liverpool games, he's coming for a lot of criticism from the Liverpool fans.
I think his issue as well now is they're seeing Keita, who can do both. Keita can tackle, break up play, but can also get forward. They've also signed a 45 million midfielder who, has played in a very good Monaco team, and he's not getting a look in. And they're like, well, why is Henderson ahead of him? He's not playing well. So
and I can see that. I mean, just going back to obviously the initial point about some of the players there. The one thing I will say about Mason Mount is, even on a few showings and his kind of loan spell last season, sort of away, what I would say about him is, when you do see him play, he does look to have already quite a big confidence and that little bit of class about him. So it'd be interesting to see whether he gets any game time. And I know that Frank Lampard today had actually asked Chelsea if they'll allow him to play in the League Cup game, because obviously he's on loan from Chelsea. So when they play each other in the League Cup, he wouldn't normally be allowed to play. But it does sound like it could be positive for both Chelsea and.
I think Chelsea are going to say no. To be honest.
Well, yeah, they probably might. I think if Mason Mount continues to have a good season this season, then he will, whether it's with Derby or elsewhere, but he'll be a Premier League player. I don't think he'll make it at Chelsea, because I don't think Chelsea are a club that look to give opportunities in the Premier League to young English players. And I think throughout the Mourinho age, there was some of it, but I think he'll certainly have a good Premier League career, but I'm not convinced it'll be at Chelsea.
A couple of the other names. So one player I saw on Saturday, I thought he was fantastic, James Maddison. Possibly he could play in that number 10 where Dele Alli was playing not very well, to be honest, in recent England games. And then we've got Jadon Sancho, who's been picked. Chabaloa, who's been picked even though he's only played 4 minutes this season. I think he's played very little. And
that was, I have to say, very, very strange, that one, I thought. I was a bit surprised at Ross Barkley as well. He's had more game time this season, but I've not really seen anything from him that suggests that he's, I think, he's always had talent, but I think he's a player that will always, I don't think fulfill his potential, to be honest.
I think Ross Barkley, he's good. He can carry the ball, but his decision making is he's just very is very, very error prone with his decision making. He always picks the wrong pass, or carries it for too long, or doesn't release the ball early enough, or doesn't take the shot on. It's something that's been there since he was 19, 20, and you'd think he would have developed really better. I was surprised. I think so. We've got Maddison, who's obviously started the season on fire. And we've also got a player who's justifying Englishmen going abroad, Jadon Sancho.
Yeah, going to Borussia Dortmund, and obviously most of his footballs come from the bench, but he's got the highest number of assists in the Bundesliga at the moment, which tells you a lot. And I think it's what I think is good about Southgate. It's good that he is looking to these players that are abroad and not, because for Jadon Sancho to at Manchester City, is that right?
Yes, yeah. So
It's a big decision for a young man, a big risk to go to a foreign club. He didn't want to just sit and wait for his time at Manchester City. And again, Manchester City, fantastic team, but they're not. They're known for having a good academy, but they're not exactly known for giving many opportunities. I know they've got Sterling to their young players. So I think again, be very interesting to see how he performed.
I mean, Borussia Dortmund, they're top of the Bundesliga at the moment. They're having an amazing season. I mean, are you surprised that no other Premier League team had a look at him and tried to buy him? Because, he's someone who was quite well known, played for England underage levels. I remember Craig Bellamy talking about him 2-3 years ago and saying this guy is going to be, one of our best players for the 10 years to come. But just, I'm pretty sure he would have preferred possibly to have stayed in England, but Borussia Dortmund have done well to get him.
Yeah, and again, I have to say, good on the lad for taking it. I think he's been given his chance. I would say on performance of this season, I think he's probably less of a surprise than somebody like Danny Welbeck being in the England squad, which absolutely I just have no idea why he keeps getting picked, but that's another story. Jadon Sancho, funnily enough, I was very surprised. I was kind of following sort of the player and looking at him, and I really did think that he might be a player that Pochettino would have gone for, just because we've talked about with Spurs for a while that we haven't really got any backup to Harry Kane. In fact, we haven't got any backup to Harry Kane. I mean, Llorente's, it'd be better getting a job as a lamppost, really. But and I thought, here's a young lad who, Pochettino, he's got a great record of nurturing young players, bringing the best out. And I thought, here's somebody, okay, might be a few million, but why not, go? So I was a little bit surprised that, with us not doing any business, that somebody who was there, I kind of thought, I thought it might be a bit of a calculated risk, but yeah, I was a little bit surprised that Spurs, maybe some other teams, but he's doing a fantastic job for Dortmund, and he looks a good player. And if he carries on like it this season, I'm sure he'll probably be back in the Premier League, and he'll probably be a lot more expensive than what clubs could have got him for this season.
Yeah, I think you're right there. You mentioned Danny Welbeck. Some people say he has actually got a good scoring record when he's given the opportunity for England. Yep. Some people are a bit disappointed that the likes of Callum Wilson's not been given a chance. Do you think it's not really a big omission, would you say?
No, I would say it's a big omission, and I think it'd be
Dorridge as well has been left out.
Yeah, I think what perhaps with Southgate, I mean, you certainly can't level against him that he's just picking players on reputation, because that's been England's problem. I think we know for decades that players that have been picked.
I mean, he dropped. Yeah, he's dropped Joe Hart and Wayne Rooney, hasn't he? So.
Yeah, Wayne Rooney, I think, retired, didn't he? So, well, in the past, obviously, he dropped Rooney, but Joe Hart, to be fair, I mean, Burnley had a miserable start to the season, and you've got to look at the amount of goals they've let in, and the goalkeeper's got to take some responsibility. So I don't think he's shown anywhere near enough to warrant being back in the England squad. Unfortunately for him, but But then, having said that, he's picked Jack Butland, and Stoke have had a pretty torrid time, and their manager, who obviously went from Derby in the summer, kind of talking about how he was going to Stoke and what he was going to. He's still down as, I think they had a good result the other day, or a better result, but he's certainly down as one of the first, possibly one of the first managerial casualties that we might do.
I think you're right. Well, that brings us on to the Championship. Big news yesterday coming out of Villa Park. Crazy game on Tuesday when Villa were they were 2-0 up.
Yeah, 2-0 up at half time, and then
Kester gets sent off.
Yeah.
Goes down to 3-2. I think Balassi got a last minute equaliser, and then Glenn Whelan misses the penalty, and that missed penalty probably sealed Steve Bruce's fate. Were you surprised by the news that he'd been fired?
Not particularly. I think from the end of last season, they're not winning in the playoffs. There was obviously the money worries all over the summer, and then suddenly they just kind of vanished overnight. They were able to keep on to Jack Grealish, who signed a new contract, but I don't think the Villa fans have always. I don't think they necessarily were big fans of Steve Bruce anyway, with his connections to Birmingham, to the other part of the city. I think they've had some disappointing results. That was another one the other night, but I think Steve Bruce is an okay Championship manager. I don't think he's. I think he's what I call one of these merry-go-round managers, kind of along with Sam Allardyce, Alan Pardew. These managers that just seem to get jobs and not necessarily always do great things. He's got teams out of the division, but no, I mean, I can't. I don't think it was a massive surprise. I think it had been rumoured. They have got money behind them now. They've tied Jack Grealish down. They should be. Let's not take it away. They might not have done it for a long time, but it is a big club, a sleeping giant there, and they should be performing better in the Championship. With some of the players that they've still got.
I mean, if you look at their front line, I think most Championship managers would want Adoma, Balassi, Grealish, Tammy Abraham, and Kodja. That's a team that, and they're on huge. Some of them are on huge salaries, more than a lot of Premier League players. I think Tammy Abraham's on about 50,000 a week. Balassi's on 60 plus, so he has been given. I think his main issue was that he strengthened the attack, but the defence, they're still playing Jedinak at centre back. The goalie they brought in has not been good enough. So it's been quite an interesting names being linked with the job. So I'll just throw three at you. So the main ones. So possibly Thierry Henry. The other one was Paulo Fonseca from Shakhtar Donetsk. Quite a strange move from Ukrainian champions to the Championship. And the other one, which a lot of people are saying, is Sam Allardyce or David Moyes, who you might describe as a merry-go-round manager.
I think I think David Moyes, in some ways, he went off to Manchester United, and I don't know, maybe Manchester United fans at the minute quite welcome David Moyes back the way Mourinho did. But I don't think David Moyes would necessarily be a bad fit for Aston Villa. When he was at Everton, he certainly got decent players there, and I think he could, at Villa, he may do okay. Sam Allardyce, I think, knowing a few Villa fans, I think they'd probably rather pick their eyes out with cocktail sticks and have him as manager. I don't think he's the kind of, the manager that certainly the fans would want. And I also don't think that Villa are in a situation where they're right down at the bottom of the league and, they need to worry too much. I think, Sam Allardyce, he's kind of one of those managers that's going to come in, keep you up, and then walk away. I think they're the jobs we're going to see him with nowadays.
He did get West Ham promoted though, so
He did.
he does know the Championship quite well.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with that. I just can't see him at Villa.
What about giving someone like Thierry Henry or John Terry? Obviously, we've seen Lampard's gone in at Derby, started quite well. Gerrard, obviously, bad result on the weekend. He started quite well at Rangers.
Yeah.
Do you think they should risk a newcomer like Thierry Henry or John Terry?
Thierry Henry's an interesting one. I mean, obviously he's coached alongside Roberto Di Matteo, Belgium, former Aston Villa manager. So he's not got what you'd call managerial experience, but he did do some coaching in his Arsenal days. Kind of went back there. I mean, there's no reason why not. I just think when it comes to kind of, people like Gerrard and Lampard, and, fair play to them for going in, but, there's managers out there that have perhaps not got big names and have worked their way through the coaching. I do think it's a bit of a shame that some of those managers are not.
Yeah.
Looked at.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Dean Smith?
Well, yeah, that's a name that comes up again and again, and his managerial record has been phenomenal, and I think it's been talked about, quite a lot on, things like Sky Sports News and Match of the Day and BBC kind of sport have interviewed him a few times.
He's a Villa fan as well.
Yeah, and that doesn't always work. But certainly, I personally, looking from the outside, would like to see a manager like him given a chance, at perhaps a bigger club and having a crack. I don't see why not. I don't see why he should be certainly lower down the list than the likes of Thierry Henry. My thought is probably because he's played for them over the last season. Is I have a feeling they may look to John Terry. Money's not an issue for Villa at the minute, so I don't think that would be a problem. I'd be interested to see whether he'd go back as we don't see them anymore, but whether he'd go back as a player manager would be interesting to see, or whether he would cut that tie. But my feeling is that he would be probably. At the moment, I would see him as perhaps being the favourite, along with maybe Dean Smith. Sam Allardyce is always going to get named alongside it. I'm sure Villa fans will be hoping that Alan Pardew doesn't get mentioned, as most anybody at any football club would probably want to make sure Alan Pardew wasn't mentioned. I'm just trying to think who else.
I think it's quite interesting. I've been reading recently that the owners are also very close to the super agent Mendes, who's obviously involved in Wolves a lot. So maybe he will get them a foreign coach. Fonseca and Thierry Henry are the ones.
And perhaps if you look at Wolves and the model that they've got, obviously, with their manager, maybe Fonseca, maybe a manager that maybe people don't know loads and loads about. He could come over and maybe he could do a similar job to what's being, done at Wolves. And I don't think any Villa fans, as much as they dislike Wolves, they're not going to argue with that. The only other thing that was done the other day is that somebody who's a Villa fan I spoke to had mentioned, interestingly, former Spurs player Glenn Hoddle, saying, does he still sort of hanker after any sort of management job?
Can I say the Glenn Hoddle thing? He's not managed for nearly over 10 years. I find it amazing that he still gets linked to jobs. And people forget his last job was with Wolves. He did very badly. He was sacked from Spurs. Obviously, it was different. It was a different time. Spurs didn't have big money. It's the days of Helder Postiga and Bobby Zamora. But it's I just don't get why he's still linked with amazing jobs when he's been inactive in the market for so long. I do find it strange.
I don't sort of have any opinion on it. It's been a long time since he managed, as you rightly say. He's just somebody that he does seem to get mentioned. I don't know whether he's interested in it. I mean, I'd be quite happy for him to go and manage and get him off commentating on TV, because he's I think he's one of the most annoying pundits there is.
Surely, as a Spurs fan, you should love him. He's like.
I met him on a few occasions. great guy. Certainly one of the most gifted players that I've ever had the privilege to see in my lifetime. But yeah, when it comes to his commentating,
I think he talks so tactically now that sometimes it does get lost for the average football. A lot of us are football inclined, but he talks ridiculous amounts of detail sometimes, which does get a little bit lost.
It gets a little bit laborious, and sometimes he makes comments that are just a little bit strange. But there we go. It won't change. Absolutely great player.
Cardiff this weekend. Do you fancy you're going to win?
Well, we should. I think Cardiff are a very poor team. They're managed by somebody who I literally cannot abide. I never liked Neil Warnock. I just don't like the man. But that aside, I think the thing is with Neil Warnock, if you look at his record, he's very good in the championship. He gets teamed up. He's got a great pedigree for that. He's quite often gone through stages where he's got teams promoted and then walked away, or been sacked. And I think he will be sacked very soon.
I think the step up is a huge step.
On paper, absolutely, with results, Spurs should win. Spurs need to play at a higher tempo, and you alluded to it earlier in the basket, and they've been very slow. I mean, the concern is that Spurs are going to be playing with quite a depleted team. There's going to be no Dele Alli. It looks like still no Eriksen. Ali looks like being out for at least another 5 weeks.
No Vertonghen.
No Vertonghen. It's a little bit concerning, I think.
At least you're not Newcastle. To be fair, Man U have their easiest game this weekend, Newcastle at home. So I think if they did lose that, then Mourinho should go. But thanks Matt for all your contributions. Thanks for joining us.
No problem at all.
Thanks for the Extra Time Talk podcast. We're hoping to do this once a week. So please join in and leave a comment. Thanks very much. Bye.
Cheers. Thank you.